1,000 miles by foot, 600 miles by truck, 1,600 miles by sea, and at the end of it all, the Promised Land. We are the Spy-Fi guys, and this is the Red Sea Diving Resort. All right, so we are back. I'm Christian.
And I'm Zach. Welcome back.
With the Red Sea Diving Resort, starring Chris Evans, Michael K. Williams,
and Haley Bennett,
amongst others. Directed by Gideon Raff.
So this is a Netflix original movie. So I don't want to hear any excuses for why you're not able to watch it along with us. This one is easy to find. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to be taken off Netflix. It is a little long. It's 2 hours and 10 minutes. We can get to that at the reviews. So ready to just jump right in? As usual, we're going to do our plot summary, do our spy fact versus spy fiction, and at the end, we'll do a rating. So you ready to get started?
All right. So here's our synopsis from IMDb. It says, Israel's Mossad agent attempts to rescue Ethiopian Jewish refugees in Sudan in 1979, which is, a really short summary for a sizable movie that I'm sure we both have a lot of notes on.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in this movie, and they could have had a little more detail on that in that IMDb entry, but what are you going to do?
But not to worry, we will go in plenty of detail.
That's right. Just in case, for whatever reason, you're not inclined to watch it yourself. So the opening, we get Michael K. Williams doing a voiceover, your classic sort of African Civil War beating that we've seen in movies like Blood Diamond and other ones that I can't think of right now, which is, we get people in a village and there's violence.
Mm-hmm.
And he does a brief recap about how it's the government versus the rebels, the usual story, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah, and we also open with that that text on the screen that says, for thousands of years, Ethiopian Jews yearned for Jerusalem. As civil war rages, they begin to fulfill their dream. So This is set in 1979, apparently?
That's when it starts.
Yeah, and then it moves for a few years.
Mm-hmm. Well, there you go. And I'm glad that you brought up that opening. I liked the opening text. It set the stage very well. But then there's another opening text I hated.
Oh.
I hated it. 4 words that I despise in movies. Inspired by true events.
Yeah, no, so that's I like at least based on true events is at least better, but inspired by, that means it could be completely fictional or it could be kind of true, but not just like a few. So we would never really know with those words. And I'm with you on that.
Bill Burr has a bit about the phrase inspired by true events. He's like, I'm a director who read a story about a cancer patient, so I made a movie about a dog. And what's crazy is that this movie obviously is based on a true story.
Mm-hmm.
So why not just say that?
I don't know.
I mean, the phrase based on a true story is already kind of a laughing stock. When we see it in a trailer, everyone laughs because we know it's going to be completely fictionalized. But this one actually did a decent job of sticking more or less
to
the general idea of what happened, but we'll get to that.
Yeah. So we start off, like you said, we've got, families fleeing the villages. And then you've got Captain America, Ari. He's very Captain America in this, which, as a Captain America fan, I appreciated. But so in my notes, half the time I say Cap, half the time I say Ari.
I just say Chris.
Yeah.
Well, he's got his Captain America muscles and his Captain America beard, which the ladies love.
Yep. So just to drive that home, when we first see him, he's like doing push-ups on the bed of a truck.
Well, yeah. How do you think he got those muscles?
Super soldier serum.
They developed their own. So, we meet him, and he meets Michael Kenneth Williams, a.k.a. Omar from The Wire, and he goes back to save a kid in a completely ridiculous but very welcome action scene to start us off.
Again, very Captain America.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the last that I'll probably mention that and just not make into a bit.
I mean, it's okay. I mean, that's probably the reason why most people who watch this movie watched it. It's because Chris Evans is in it, and we like Chris Evans because he's Cap. So there you go. He even says we leave no one behind.
Right?
Very Captain America line. after doing the old brick on the pedal trick.
I was gonna say that. Speaking of World War II heroes, that reminded me of like that bit in Last Crusade, where Indiana Jones, and he gets into the boats and turns on the boats, and the Nazis are chasing the boats while he escapes in the motorcycle.
Nice.
So it's a like I've called it the Indiana Jones misdirect.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's something that we're going to get to is there are a lot of cliches in this movie. And like we talked about last week at The Hunt for Red October, cliches aren't always bad.
True.
I actually watched this movie twice. The first time was a long time ago, and then the second was last night after having done the research. And I liked it more the second time around. But again, we'll get to that. The cliches bothered me less. So they escape. And Omar, I'll call him Omar because his name is very long. We'll call him Omar.
Kabede, I think. Yeah.
Yes. He talks about the prophecy about returning the tribes to Jerusalem.
Right.
I thought that was funny because, in fiction, whenever there's a prophecy, the prophecy always is going to happen by the time the end credits roll. And I guess it sort of happened here.
Yeah.
But they make it all the way into Sudan, and then they get arrested.
Yep. And then again, we see Ari doing push-ups in the cell. Oh, no, pull-ups in the cell. Right. So, I guess that's just his thing. He just is exercising constantly.
Sure.
Walter Bowen, the U.S. cultural attaché from Khartoum, the Khartoum embassy, gets him released. And, I mean, anytime you hear of a cultural attaché, we all know what that's code for. That's CIA.
Really? I didn't know that.
Really? Yeah, no, that's like that's commonly known. Like if you're like the attaché, for agriculture or the cultural ambassador, something like that, you're probably CIA.
Well, Chris Evans even has a line where he's like, "Oh yeah, are you here to work on Sudan's brimming cultural heritage?" I thought he was just trying to be like mildly xenophobic.
Oh no, no, you're definitely not an attaché. You're CIA, and I know you're CIA. That was what that line was.
By the way, nice job keeping track of all these characters' names. I just wrote Greg Kinnear.
I didn't recognize that as Greg Kinnear, actually. I feel like I usually see Greg Kinnear with a mustache, so that threw me off when I didn't see that.
Well, the only other movie I've seen him in that I can remember right now, the one I bring up on my other podcast, Tuesday Night Gaming, shameless plug, is Mystery Man. He doesn't have a mustache in that.
Okay.
So Greg Kinnear gets them out. It's revealed that they're pretending to be anthropology students.
Yeah, and they get sent back home. So they're called back to Israel, and the other guy who was with Ari, Sammy, who's like a doctor of some sort, says, I'm out. I can't do this anymore, and can't take the pressure.
Which is like, it's sort of like, is it supposed to be an emotional moment? Like, we don't even know who this guy is. I don't think we even know what his name is until Chris Evans goes, Sammy, as he drives away.
Yeah, no, that's not until, I didn't know his name until that point either. So, yeah, I don't know what they were trying to play out there. I think they were trying to go for a trope that just didn't work there. But, so we see, rather than trying to go home, Ari goes to Mossad HQ, and there's Ben Kingsley as his boss.
Right.
Ethan.
Yes. And another extremely cliche scene where he does the thing where he's like, you're a loose cannon. You're going to get somebody killed. You're off the force. Hand in your badge and gun. That's effectively what happens in this scene.
Yeah. Except he doesn't get fired.
Well, he does get fired. He just refuses to accept that he was fired.
Yeah. Right. And we find out that his wife, Sarah, left him and took their daughter to her parents.
Right. And I think I may have picked up a mistake here, by the way.
Oh.
So Ben Kingsley says, how is Sarah? Chris says, she left me. Then he gets home, plays the answering machine with her leaving him. So how did he know? Maybe he just successfully and correctly guessed that she was about to leave him.
I think that she left him, and then, but when he got said that they were breaking up, but that he didn't know if he'd actually find her at home when she was there. But who knows? I'll let it slide.
This isn't the tightest script in the world. One last thing about this scene with Ben Kingsley is he says that the prime minister is driving the operation to extract Ethiopian Jews. So we get a brief montage, and then Chris comes up with this brilliant idea.
Yes, while he's using some ancient technology, a microfiche reader. Have you ever used one of these things?
Yeah, I have. It was a long time ago, but I did use it at a library once.
Exactly. That's where I use one as well. So, when I had to do research projects back in like middle school, I had to get the microfilm or microfiche.
Yeah, I like it. It feels like you're really going into the past, as opposed to just looking something up on a computer.
Right.
Back in my day, it really did work, or whatever. So he comes up with this idea. He does another cliche thing where he goes up to Ben Kingsley's house in the middle of the night. But whatever. But there's a funny line when he gets to Mossad HQ the next day where a guy says, "Didn't we fire him?" And Ben Kingsley says twice.
Twice. Yep.
Yep. I like that.
And so the plan, we hear the plan in bits. So we first hear that the only way to get substantial numbers out is by the sea. And he brings up that there's this abandoned hotel called the Red Sea Diving Resort. It was built by an Italian company in the early 70s, but it was abandoned 5 years ago. And now the Sudanese government is looking to lease it. And so Ben Kingsley's boss, whose name I did not catch, has great line. Has a lot of great lines. So he says, you want Mossad to purchase an abandoned hotel from the Sudanese government. And then you want to send a group of Jews to a Muslim country, to a place where they might get eaten by Bedouins, to run a fake hotel in order to rescue a group of black Jews who might or might not survive a 100-kilometer walk across the desert to be smuggled out to sea by Israeli Navy SEALs to an Israeli ship.
And it's not even the craziest thing. Yeah. It's not even the craziest thing the Mossad's ever done.
No.
I also remember that thing about the Bedouin tribes, because the way they explain why it was shut down was because the area is lawless and there's these like bandits who will kill people who come by
and potentially eat them.
Yes. So just remember that. We'll get back to it. So yeah, that scene where so he says all that and then he's like, "Where do we still have Natcore running?" It's like, yeah, he's going for it. Dun, dun, dun. Awesome. I'm again, it's a cliche, but I like that too.
Yeah, I know that was like it was it's a cliche of explain all this ridiculous plan. Like, well, he explains the plan and he's like, so let me get this straight. You want to do all of this? All right, we're in.
Yeah, and he's like, let's make it happen. So I like that.
Then we get a scene with Ari and his daughter, where he's sort of explaining how there are Ethiopian Jews, which is all the way back to the Queen of Sheba, which when I heard about it, I didn't really know anything about Ethiopian Jews, but when I heard about it, and then I heard that, that makes a lot of sense.
It's a prominent theory.
Yeah.
Is that they are descended from the son of the Queen of Sheba who smuggled the Ark of the Covenant back with him.
Right.
His father is King Solomon. Other people have suggested they ended up fleeing there after fleeing a civil war in ancient Israel, or fled into exile after the destruction of the temple in 586 BC.
Oh, wow.
However they got there, they've been there.
They're there.
Yeah, for a while.
All right, so next we have another, again, kind of a trope, but it's the I'm gathering a team together scene. So we start off, and he gathers Rachel, who is working. So I'm not sure if she's just undercover as a Pan Am stewardess, or if she's actually a Pan Am stewardess at this point.
Well, so she first of all beats up a pilot.
Right, yeah, who's trying to assault her.
Right. And then says something about a PLO accountant.
So it sounds like she's undercover then.
Yeah. Okay. I really like this montage. It's like the Seven Samurai. It's also like the Blues Brothers getting the band back together.
Or even like, when they started gathering all the Nick Fury starts gathering all the Avengers. Yeah.
But he'd been doing that for a few movies before.
That's true. But that whole getting them all together onto the helicarrier. But anyways, let's see.
So the only other character that I have like a note on for getting the band together, because quite frankly, these characters aren't really that memorable, especially all the men. But one of them was the doctor who he calls Stumpy because he's lost 2 fingers.
Okay, so that I never noticed that he lost those 2 fingers until that scene later in the movie. Like, I just didn't pick up on it for some reason.
I didn't notice it at all until I watched it for a second time. And then he calls him Stumpy, and then you see a shot of the hand.
Wow.
Yeah. I know. It's a little cold-blooded.
It's quite. So, let's just run through the other people who he gathers together. So, he gets Sammy. He also goes to get Jake, who's an expert diver, and you've got Max, who's an assassin.
Right.
And so they all get recruited, and there's a scene, another trope scene where they're practicing their cover identities and talking. All right, what's your name? Where are you born? What's your parents' names? Where do you go to high school? All that sort of stuff.
Yep. And
which reminded me of a scene in Argo, which actually this movie kind of reminds me a lot of Argo in a few ways.
I could see that.
But there's a scene, where Ben Affleck's doing the exact same thing with the Canadian guest house residents in Argo.
Yeah, Chris Evans pushes them. He's like, "You hesitate, you're dead." It's like, I'm sorry. We've all been through security. Everyone hesitates when they get asked their address. Chill out. I also liked in that part, the part where one of them doesn't speak a second language, so he's from Malta. No one knows
right.
Malta speak. And then Ben Kingsley goes back. He repeats what he said before about a loose cannon. He says, "You're all too reckless."
Right. And he says, this could be the tagline, is that you guys will have no backup, no exfil, no guns. So they've got to do this all without any of those things. So they fly over, they get to passport control in Sudan, and the first person to go through, Jake, gets stopped, and they take him for additional screening. But everyone else gets through, so they're just sort of like, all right, what do we do? Or do we leave him? Yeah. Just keep moving. And finally he gets out, and we find that they just wanted a bribe from him, basically.
I'm surprised he was the only one. I mean, being you saw the line of people, they were all very visibly white and therefore not from Sudan, most likely. Feels like they would have been targeted for additional ringing out.
Yeah, and so as they're leaving the airport, they run again into what was his name? Well, not Ben Kingsley.
Greg Kinnear?
Greg Kinnear's character,
who apparently just hangs around the airport.
Yeah, I just call him U.S. Embassy official.
Okay, that's fine.
And strongly hints that he's sort of onto them, and that trying to find out what they're doing in the country.
Well, he seemed to already sort of figure that something was up with Chris Evans the first time he got him out of prison, and then seeing him again only, probably a couple of months later. Yeah. Could have at least worn some sunglasses or something. Cut his hair. So they go and they meet, I don't know his name, a higher up official in the government. And in order to negotiate the purchase, or the leasing rather, of the Red Sea diving resort, Chris Evans shows that he knows how to speak the local language,
which is bribery.
And the only other sort of note I have here is that this is another cliche, or maybe it's a trope, but there seems to be this thing where you meet a tough guy, and the tough guy, the hero meets a tough guy, the tough guy staring him down. And the hero offers him something, or does something unexpected, or tries to please him, and then the guy stares at him some more and then starts laughing, and then everyone relaxes. I think even Jabba the Hutt does it. Jedi. Yeah. So everyone starts laughing, and it's like, oh, phew, everything's cool. This movie does it twice.
So everyone gets to the resort, and they see that it's in kind of a state of disrepair, and as they're looking around, they find there's a freshly caught fish. There's a paper from that week, so someone's there. And apparently, it looks like there's just people who've just been living in the abandoned resort, and they take them on as their local staff.
And I don't really see what's so surprising about it. I mean, it is a building. You would have expected someone to move in. Maybe not that recently, but still.
Yeah.
So they move in. I know they got their 70s short shorts. They meet up with Omar again. He's like, many people are dying along the way, so whatever you got to do it fast.
Yeah, so they plan their first operation for basically 2 weeks after they get there. There's no dry runs. So as they're all discussing this, a bus comes up the road, and they're not expecting anyone, and it turns out to be a bunch of German tourists who are visiting the resort. And the Sudanese government apparently sent them there as a test to make sure that they were actually running a resort and not, doing anything else.
I absolutely love this part. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
Which it doesn't really make sense that they would be sent because they were like there like what it's like literally their first
It's
day.
that same day. Yeah, it's that first or maybe the second day, but yeah.
And I have to wonder, who are these people going on vacation in Sudan?
That's
Into a
very
lawless
good
area with
question.
animals.
I mean,
nowadays
they're Germans. They're very adventurous folk.
apparently they're not the only ones. I mean, especially because it was established earlier that this is a lawless area with cannibals in it.
Mm-hmm.
But then I guess they wouldn't be told that if Colonel Madibo did in fact send them there.
They have to figure out, all right, our fake hotel just became a real one.
Yeah, so it indicated that they never intended it for it to be a real hotel.
Yeah. They were just using it as a cover. They weren't actually going to have any guests.
Right.
And so because of the unexpected guests, and having to deal with them, they became 2 hours late to their rendezvous. So they had to go to the refugee camp to bring the refugees back to the hotel for pickup.
So just a brief explanation. So the refugees walked from Ethiopia into Sudan, where they got put into a refugee camp in Sudan, and then now they're taking them out.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So they go and they get them, put them on the buses that they have, and run into a roadblock. Sammy's, saying, we got to turn back. We can't do this. And Ari's, no, we can't fail on our first operation. And so they're in this whole time they're in radio contact, not just with the Navy SEALs who are off the shore, but also with Mossad HQ. But when this happens, or when they find out that there's a roadblock, they cut radio communication, they turn out the lights, and they just ram right through the checkpoint.
Why do you think they cut radio communications?
I think, well, first, if they kept demanding, I think just in case they got stopped, so that they wouldn't hear, Mossad asking, "What's going on?"
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, so they ram it, and a guy shoots the heck out of one of the trucks, but they manage to get away.
Yep. And so they go and they bring the refugees to the shore where the Navy SEALs are waiting, and I forget who says it, but one of them, gives a quote of, "Who saves one life saves the world entire. We just saved 174."
Yeah, that was a good line. It's from the Torah, if I recall correctly. Yeah, so everything goes smooth on the Navy side. Somebody says we're all just refugees, though I may have missed. That may be later. And then there's a shot of the Ethiopians eating, and the camera's like above them. That's based on a real life photograph that.
Oh wow, that's cool.
During the end credits.
But yeah, so after their successful mission, Sammy and Ari are talking, and Ari's just like, it's just a random checkpoint, and Sammy's like, may have just been a random checkpoint this time, but thanks to you, next time it won't be.
And then we sort of get this established thing that Chris Evans, like Ben Kingsley said, it just sort of plays things by the seat of his pants, and things tend to work out for him for now.
Yeah.
But then Colonel Madibo shows up at the resort, and he's like, let's take a look at your trucks. And what saves them is that they somehow must have swapped the end so that there weren't any bullet holes.
Yeah, and made it match so it didn't look like there was new wood, which was clever on there. No, actually, it's not that. So what it was is apparently their soldier missed entirely when he was shooting at them.
Wait, really?
Yeah, there's a line where Arya says, "We're lucky if that soldier hadn't been so reluctant to say that he missed us entirely, we wouldn't have got away with it."
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I thought they were doing the Ian Fleming thing with the attention to detail. They figured out if their trucks were shot, they'd have to replace it, or else there would be evidence.
But no, they weren't that smart.
Well, or they didn't, or maybe they thought to check and they just didn't.
Or that, yeah.
Also, I noticed that Colonel Madibo, when he's leaving, he nods to one of the staff members. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I did see that. So I wasn't sure what was going on with that.
Well, I mean, I was like, well, is the staff member a spy for him?
Maybe.
Spying on spies.
Never comes back again.
No. maybe a deleted scene.
Yeah, so we also see that there's we get a little bit of Arya's backstory. So, do you know about this boat, the Exodus?
Yep. I've seen the movie. So,
okay.
sorry, I don't want to cut you off. I can
No,
tell you about it.
That was a legitimate question.
Okay, so there's this very famous book that got turned into a movie starring Paul Newman. Called Exodus, and it's not about the Exodus from Egypt, as the title would imply. It's about a boat called Exodus, which took Jewish refugees not from the Holocaust, though they were Holocaust survivors, from British internment camps in Cyprus, and was a blockade runner into Israel before the founding of the country. So yeah, it was and then the book is about people on the boat coming in, and then it's about like the founding and then the war getting started. There's actually an episode of Mad Men, if you've ever watched that show, where one of the characters is like reading it, and like because they also get hired to work for an Israeli tourism company, and so it's very famous. Though you don't hear too much about it anymore. It's by Leon Uris, if you've ever heard of him.
No. Okay.
So that's what they're making a reference to.
Gotcha. So Ari's backstory is that his mother was on the Exodus with him, and when they wouldn't let them off, the British official, was it British or was it American?
British.
The British official took pity on his mother and hid him so that he could escape, and they moved to America later. And so that's why he has an American accent and sounds like Chris Evans.
Yep, and it's also why he wants to save other refugees, because he was a refugee once too. Yeah.
So next we sort of have this montage of everyone sort of getting into their roles and running the resort. You have Rachel, learning to teach them aerobics and other stuff. What's his name? Jake doing dive classes, and Chris Evans being the boss, and he's got his satisfied customers board, which he's updating with numbers, but of course that's the numbers for how many refugees they rescued. So they also have a lot of successful missions going on.
This is my favorite part.
And during that montage you get Chris Evans, of course, doing more push-ups, but then you also see him doing underwater pull-ups, which is not as impressive as it sounds, because you weigh less underwater, so it's not really going to be that much harder in any way.
Yeah, you probably want some other kind of workout if you're going to be underwater. I also like the part where it shows the Germans leaving, and then a bunch of Japanese tourists come right in to replace them. It's like that wasn't just a one-off thing. They're going to have tourists coming through.
So the Sudanese military is starting to get suspicious about people disappearing. And so that one colonel gathers everyone in the refugee camp and, asks, does anyone know about the refugees who have gone missing? So no one talks. And so he starts shooting people. Like just having them get shot in the head. And he keeps doing this until someone talks and says that, it's Kabebe who's taking them out of there, or Omar.
Yeah. So that's like a pretty big tonal shift. Is that on the one hand you have them like goofing around, and on the other hand you have like
you get a
really
montage. And then you get some serious mood whiplash there.
I do like that they tried to establish how dire the situation is. I just wish they had sort of that more sustained across the whole movie.
Yeah, I mean, I do enjoy the montage, but with that next scene, it just seems out of place. But
so having established that, there sort of becomes pressure on these characters that they have to stop. The situation's getting too hot.
And so they try to do one last mission. Okay. And on that mission, they find out, first of all, that the Sudanese military knows it's Kabede, and that is the inside man. And so on their mission, Ari tries to get Kabede to go, but he, refuses, saying, there's still more people that we can save.
Right.
And as they're going, they get assaulted by military jeeps with the Sudanese troops on them, and everyone's getting shot at. And Ari and Sammy help this Navy SEAL who got shot.
Wait, okay, hang on. I'm sorry. Let's back up a little bit. They take some refugees out. They get them to the beach, but as they're loading them onto the boats, Sudanese military shows up and just starts shooting at them.
Yeah. they get everyone off the beach, but then there's just Sam, Ari, and then Kabebe left on the beach. So Sam and Ari go one way, Kabebe goes another, and to distract them from shooting up everything, and you have Navy SEALs asking for a clearance to open fire, and Mossad's like, no, we're not going to start a war. We cannot open fire.
Well, it might not be so much starting a war as it is blowing the op.
That too, yeah.
I gotta say, this was my second favorite part, even though it was really disappointing. I was like, here we go, epic gun battle, Navy SEAls versus militia. This is gonna be badass. This is gonna be awesome. And then it just didn't happen.
Yeah.
But it makes sense. It didn't bother me too much because it made sense. They made the right call. But then Chris Evans is like, he comes out and he's like, tries to explain what's going on, which makes no sense.
Right. So he claims that they have a night diving.
Yeah.
With tourists, but they don't check on that. They don't. Yeah. And if they do, then they just left. He just left his tourists out there.
Also, there's a dude next to him literally covered in blood.
Yeah.
So if they were like, oh, it's a night dive, so who got shot? Nobody.
I got cut on some coral.
Yeah. So, but fortunately, the Sudanese don't believe that because that would have been ridiculous.
Yeah. And so they get arrested.
Mm-hmm. And then there's this confrontation in the jail cell between Chris Evans and Stumpy. Sorry, Stumpy.
So Sammy is saying, you can't just make shit up as you go along and hope for the best. And so apparently something happened in Tangiers to Sammy's hand.
Yep.
And so, yeah, like we mentioned earlier, I definitely didn't notice that he was missing some fingers until this point.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Well, I got to say, just for this and just in general, I didn't feel like the character stuff in this movie worked. I don't know about you.
I think the only character who we know anything really about is Chris Evans. Mm-hmm. So his stuff I think worked for me, but also just because I'm got some carryover from Cap and others and that sort of stuff in it. But everyone else, yeah, for example, Rachel. We know nothing about Rachel or
we don't
Jake.
learn anything about her either,
and we know even less about the assassin guy. What's his name?
Oh, I don't even remember. That's how non-memorable he is. Oh, Max.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they keep saying that Chris Evans is this guy who has like all this ego and he makes up his goal and he gets people killed, but then it doesn't really pan out that way.
I can see that. Like he definitely does. I think that's part of what that first scene with the kid, where he's going after the kid, saving the kid, is supposed to demonstrate, or being reckless other times. I can see that. I mean, it's a trope, but it makes sense.
I get it. I would have preferred if his attitude got someone we actually knew about killed.
Fair.
Instead of just a red shirt.
Yeah.
Then I think it would have worked. But I don't know. Our listeners' mileage may vary. This might work for you. I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong if it does.
Oh yeah. So Rachel goes to see the official in the Sudanese government who sold them the resort, and gets Sammy and Ari released.
Yep.
And
someone points out though that they're like on the Sudanese radar. I think it was Ben Kingsley said that.
Yeah. So this is the point now where when they get back to the resort, Ben Kingsley's there, and he says he's shutting the program down, and Ari's like, "My job isn't done here yet.
Finish the fight." Yeah, and so they don't like it, but he's like, "You're the Sudanese are on to you. It's only a matter of time before they catch you, and then you're really going to be screwed."
Yeah. And so, knowing that they're wrapping things up, they go to find Kabede to see, make sure he got out right. And in the meantime, after he had, escaped from the beach, the colonel had someone follow him back to his house, and so now, and apparently he got stabbed, and
yeah, so it's more drama, scary.
Yeah, and punctured a lung, but is still alive.
Yeah, it's a movie injury, movie wound. But it further establishes that like the ring's closing in.
Yeah. And so they decide they're going to do one last mission.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, since Ben Kingsley shut down the C option, they have to find a new method.
Yep. But actually, before we get to the new method,
yes.
they come back to the resort and they find Colonel Medibo waiting for them, just eating dinner, putting out his cigar in the hummus. What a jerk!
What a waste of hummus.
Which I was like, did the Colonel really think they'd be dumb enough to drive the refugees right up to their own front door in trucks? Maybe. So the Colonel's kind of throwing his weight around. He interrogates the staff. He interrogates the waitress.
He has his troops search the truck, but the trucks are empty, and we find that apparently the refugees were offloaded sometime before they got back and are being led, or in the dark around.
Yep. Is that more luck or is it skill? You decide.
A little bit of both.
Rachel does a stealth kill.
Yeah, so one of the troops actually does find where they're hiding them, and she uses her. This is I guess the only time we see her use her like Krav Maga skills to take someone out.
Yep, and it works, and everyone just kind of stands there and watches her do it, and then her buddies show up right after it's finished.
Right.
Gotta love that. But then they're like, okay, wait, this guy's, I don't know if he's dead. Presumably he's dead. And then
I wasn't sure.
And then it's only a matter of time before they're gonna find him.
Yeah.
Or they're gonna realize that someone's missing. So we go back to everyone eating dinner. Medibo is an ultra dick. Chris Evans calls him out on it.
Grabs a knife.
He does the laugh again, the laugh from before. Chris Evans gets hit by a rifle butt, and then they leave. And I noticed that when Medibo's leaving, you see like some tourists like hanging out, having dinner right.
Yeah. So there's all these tourists, like a few tables of tourists just eating dinner as this whole thing's going on. So
that must have been pretty awkward.
Or maybe they didn't speak English and didn't understand what's going on, and I don't know. It was just weird.
Yeah, this is funny. Okay. Anyway, so they have to figure out another way to get out.
Yeah. So Ari goes to talk to Greg Kinnear, who I guess at this point we've have it confirmed and not just referenced that he's CIA.
That's right. He's actually been investigating them this whole time. It's just he was on to them, but he was unfortunately on their side, so it all works out.
So Ari, admits that he's from the Israeli government and that, he's trying to hypothetically move a bunch of refugees out of the country, and asks him for his help. Rick Kinnear's like, I don't have that much pull around here. So, but the best thing I can do is ask my bosses. So he calls them, waits, they call back, and we never actually hear what they say.
Well, presumably they say yes.
Yeah.
Because
they
get the airplanes and they get the airfield.
Yeah. So we cut back to all the refugees and everyone back at the resort, and they're moving everything out of there, everyone out of there. But they can't all fit on the two, trucks that they usually use. So they have to use the Sudanese tour bus as well.
Good thing they had them.
Yeah. So, and they drive towards, before that though, Chris Evans grabs the satisfied customer sign to bring it back.
Nice memento of his time there. Hopefully they'll let him keep it.
Yeah. And the colonel finds out that they're short a man, and so he assembles his troops, and they're all driving towards the resort.
Because obviously they killed him. It's not like he got lost or maybe decided to go swimming or something like that.
So Ari and everyone else are headed to a old British airfield, and once they get there, they plow through the gates, and once they get there, they start using glow sticks to light up the runway, which I thought was a cool idea.
Nice. I also like the part where they're like, it should be there, and what if it's not? Dun, dun, dun.
But they also find that there's like a tree in the middle of the runway.
This is one thing after another, which I do like.
And then, so, they find it, and then the troops, I guess, somehow figure out where they're going, and they're like 9 kilometers away. Once, Ari and everyone else finds out that the troops are coming to them, they're like, all right, what do we do? Do we load everyone back on the trucks and the bus? Do we leave? What do we do? And Omar stops and, wait, stop, listen. And they hear the plane, and then they see the plane, and the plane, flies right over above them, but also flies right over the troops. So now the troops know exactly where to go.
Exactly what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So this part was very Argo. Argo also had.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. So the plane lands, and Greg Kinnear's character is there, and he's helping everyone on the plane. But they load maybe half the people on the plane, and then there's this military American officer who's like saying, "No, stop! This plane only holds 228, but there are 400 people."
Dun, dun.
And Omar's like, "If you leave us, we'll die." And Ari tells the soldier, "You know what? No, you decide who stays and who goes, because I can't do it. You choose who lives, who dies."
Using that Jewish guilt. Using that Jewish guilt as a weapon. They're doing it for years.
And so he's like, "No, I can't do this." All right, you can, but it's not just a matter of safety pros. It's also a matter of space. It's like, "Oh, we'll make space." So they start throwing all these chairs and everything else off of the plane to make more room. And so they get everyone on board, and then they're starting to crank up the back door. And of course, that's exactly when the troops get there, and they start shooting, but no one thankfully gets hit.
Again, you miss again.
And as they start to take off, and the colonel's like, "I don't care what you have to do, stop that plane." And as they're taking off, they're like, they have just enough room, and they just clip the tree that's in the middle of the runway, but it doesn't damage the plane, and they get into the air.
Yeah, nice one. Another victory for the USA.
Woo! And as they're in the plane, and they're sort of taking a sigh of relief, and everyone's like, "Okay, we can breathe now. We actually got there." And Ari opens this letter that he'd gotten earlier from his wife, and it's a drawing from his daughter, who previously, which I guess we didn't really talk about it too much, but his daughter had a drawing and said "My family," and it's just her and her mom.
Cliche.
Ari has been drawn into the photo with his beard,
and everything's gonna be just fine.
Yeah. And they get off, and so they land in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone gets off. You have Ben Kingsley there. You have his boss there, who somehow knows Greg Kinnear's character, apparently, and like they're shaking hands.
Yeah, they probably coordinated on it.
Yeah.
And then this is my third favorite part, which is where the movie footage turns into real footage of the real people arriving.
A trope, but a good one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know me, I like all of the real life stuff behind this faction. So that totally worked for me. And then at the very end, or did you have anything before the very end?
That's it.
Yep. So in the very end, we get our political statement, which is that there are, of course, millions of refugees in the world today.
Right.
I'm not going to comment on that.
Okay. So what do we have? So that's the plot. What do we have for spy fact versus spy fiction?
Okay, so I have quite a lot of spy fact and spy fiction, but I like it. My sources for this one was the Jewish Virtual Library and a BBC news story by Rafi Berg. So most notably, the name of the resort was actually Aros on the Red Sea, spelled Arous.
Oh,
Aros was the name of a village nearby.
That's less fun.
Yeah. Well, apparently, if you go to Google Maps and type in Red Sea Diving Resort, there is one. So maybe somewhere along the line, they made a new one.
Maybe.
So all of the character names have been changed. Ari Levinson is not a real person. He's based on a guy named Danny Limor, who consulted on the film. He was the actual agent approved by Israeli Prime Minister at the time, Menachem Begin, spelled like begin, to do the mission. Rachel is based on Yola Reitman, who was a real person. She was a flight attendant and a diver, but was not a Mossad agent at the time that she was recruited.
Really?
Yes.
So she became one, or was just like a
contractor? I mean, she became part of a Mossad operation. I don't know if she actually got like the badge or whatever, but she did go undercover, and she was an administrator of the resort.
That was one of my questions. What was her actual role other than teaching yoga and aerobics?
Yeah, her job was to be like, Ari was like the owner, but she was the one who actually ran.
Okay.
Kabedi Bimro, aka Omar, not a real person. He's based on Faridi Yazaizo Aklum. who was dubbed the Ethiopian Moses for his role getting Ethiopian Jews out.
This is something I did want to talk about because, once he got injured and he was on the plane, I half thought he was going to die on the plane. It was like Moses never getting to see the promised land kind of thing.
Oh, see, I would have done that if I were them. That's very dramatic.
Yeah, so I kind of thought that was going to happen, like when Ari's next to him and, he's there and he's, still got a punctured lung. So I thought he was gonna die on the plane before reaching there, but I guess they want to end on a happier note.
Or if it were an action movie, he would have been like, "You guys go, I'll buy you time," and he grabs an AK-47. But no, so the real life Klum sort of started on his way towards this in 1977. He was wanted by Ethiopian authorities for, quote, anti-government activity. In other words, sympathizing with rebels and for encouraging Jews to emigrate to Israel. So he escaped to Sudan along with a wave of non-Jewish refugees from Ethiopia. They were fleeing a civil war and a deepening food crisis. So like in the movie, his trip with the refugees through the plane, or rather through the operation, was his first time in Israel, and he remained involved in getting Ethiopian Jews out for the rest of his life. He died in 2009 on a trip to Ethiopia under mysterious circumstances.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow, that's, still 10 years ago, but that's like relatively recent. Wow.
Well, I think he was fairly grown. He had like a wife and so on. So
yeah.
So a couple other things. So do you remember my favorite part, or my second favorite part, with the where they get caught and the Navy SEALs?
Yeah.
And then Chris Evans gives them a totally ridiculous explanation. Well, in real life, the explanation worked.
What?
So, according to the Jewish Virtual Library, the Israelis were caught red-handed by Sudanese smugglers. Sudanese soldiers looking for smugglers. Soldiers started shooting at the dinghies, and the Mossad agents started yelling, quote, "What do you think you're doing? This is an important tourist event. We're showing the beauty of night diving in Sudan, and you're ruining it all." And the soldiers just backed off.
Wow.
I know, right? Crazy.
That's almost ridiculous enough to work. It's like one of those things where it's like, it's so ridiculous that why would you make that as your excuse?
Well, I guess
it has to be true.
I guess the dinghies must have been far enough away that the soldiers wouldn't have been able to tell exactly what was going on.
Gotcha.
So, and okay, so the next thing is about tourism. So in the movie, the tourists just show up, right? They see the brochures and the colonel sends them. And then when they get there, the Mossad higher ups are like, "Oh my God, this is terrible. Why are they there? This is going to blow the whole thing. This is awful, awful, awful." In real life, the Israelis hired a travel office in Zurich owned by a Jewish man who was in the know and encouraged groups of wealthy Europeans to go. They offered first-rate gear, professional dive masters, nice food, deep sea dives, whatever. So they were actively encouraging people to come, which might be a little bit unethical. You're putting innocent people into the middle of a spy operation.
Yeah.
The visitor's book was a catalog of glowing comments. Some of the guests who came to visit include people from Saudi Arabia, people from foreign diplomats, and even a squad of elite British commandos who wrote back to their higher-ups war stories of survival in the harrowing Sudanese desert.
Wow.
Okay, so in 1984, the reason why they were shut down was because an Israeli politician bragged about it in the news. That's why it got shut down.
Really? Okay.
It's a good thing stuff like that doesn't happen anymore, though. So do you also remember when they ran through the checkpoint?
Yeah.
So in the early days of the op, the vehicles ran through checkpoints all the time.
Oh, wow.
That was just part of the plan. But then they stopped when a guard opened fire at them and missed.
Oh. Huh.
So the movie was sort of correct. They just sort of moved up the timeline a little bit.
Yeah.
I also thought that the movie didn't quite capture how difficult it was for the Ethiopians. So when the timing was right, hundreds of refugees went into the desert, taking only what they could carry. Then they were packed onto trucks, 600-mile drive.
Wow.
Over badly potholed roads and frequent checkpoints. And they only traveled at night. Or, navigating by moonlight. And then when it was during the day, they would stop and hide in a gully all day.
Jeez.
So it was even before they got to the Red Sea resort. It was already a really difficult journey. Of the 14,000 refugees who attempted to escape to Israel, 1,500 were killed along the way, died in the camps, or were abducted by various actors, never to be seen again.
Wow.
So like I said, they could have made the stakes a little bit.
Yeah.
Made it a little bit clearer. So just two more. So in real life, the agents did hire about 15 local Sudanese staff to serve as waiters, chambermaids, and a chef. They even talked about the chef's cooking. And Yola, aka Rachel, said that hiding the secret from the Sudanese staff was the biggest challenge. And she said that she was proud that during the entire 3 years, nobody had an inkling of what was happening around them.
Oh, yeah.
So the part where Colonel Madibo is talking to the waitress and he's like, "Did you ever see anything?" She probably was telling me the truth when she said she didn't see anything. And then the last bit about the airplanes. So they didn't use American airplanes, according to my sources. They used Israeli ones. And they switched because naval rescues had become too dangerous. So at one point, when they landed the planes, the Ethiopian Jews had never seen an airplane before. So were freaked out by this huge, loud metal thing. But then when the doors came down, a bunch of Israeli commandos came out with like their giant guns.
Of course.
Not the smartest move. And some of the Ethiopians just ran away into the night and had to be found again. That would have been a little funny if they'd had that in the movie, but I can see why they didn't do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is all of my spy fact and spy fiction for you.
A lot of great research there. Thank you for that.
Sure, you're welcome. I mean, I think reading about the real life made me like the movie a little bit more.
Yeah. All right. So speaking of liking the movie, where does this rate on your scale? So our once again, a scale is 1 to 10 martinis, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest.
So the first time I saw the movie, I was like, this is full of cliches. It's really kind of slow. The action's sort of disappointing. Having thought about it, read a little bit about the background, and then watching it again, I still think it's a Netflix original movie. So I can't really recommend it to people unless you're really into Chris Evans or you're really into Israel stuff. I would describe it as average. I would say 5 out of 10 martinis. All
right. And because I am a Chris Evans fan, I'm going to give that one more. I'm going to go with a solid 6 out of 10 martinis. I mean, which I consider a recommend. Like, if you want to watch something like it, if you are a Chris Evans fan and miss him being Captain America, and you want to watch him being pretty heroic and something else, I'd give it a recommend. Or if you like, you like Israel and Mossad stuff, also recommend. And
don't be undersold by the inspired by a true story. It's much closer to real life than it seems.
Yeah.
So it's not the worst way to kill 2 hours.
No. Or 2 hours and however many minutes. So join us next time where we will be reviewing The Spy Who Dumped Me. We're going to be doing this sort of thing where we go, we do a real life or something that's based on a real event and something that's completely fictional. So next week we'll be fairly certain that The Spy Who Dumped Me was not based on any real events.
I think it's safe to say that. And at least right now it's on Hulu as well as other streaming services. So see if you can find it that way.
Thanks for joining us. And I've been Christian.
And I've been Zach.
And this is the Spy-Fi Guys, signing off. Thank you for listening to the Spy-Fi Guys. If you enjoyed our podcast, please be sure to give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. The theme song from this podcast is Mistake the Getaway by Kevin MacLeod from Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Films, books, and television shows reviewed by our podcast are the intellectual property of their respective copyright holders, and no infringement is intended.